Right. Yeah. So, welcome to the Just Transition meeting. This is our 10th one of these that we've done, which feels like a milestone. So I'm glad that we've managed to keep it going for that long. But yeah, no, thank you all for coming. As I said, it is available online as well, so it's afterwards the recording, so people may want to watch that later or share if what is discussed today is particularly interesting and they want other people to see it firsthand. What we'll do is we'll just do a brief round of introductions so everyone knows who's in the room, and then we'll go into it. So we'll just go in the order that you are on my screen. Or let's try that thing where someone nominates someone else from the room. So I'll go to Ian first because you're first. Oh, I should say for those who don't know, I'm Sam Perry. I'm the Green Bargaining Officer for Yorkshire and Humber, or as of next week, it will be North East Yorkshire and Humber Trade Union Congress. I'll go to Ian.
Hi, my name's Ian Richardson. I'm based in Northumberland. I'm part of the CWU, so tend often to work remotely. I look forward to the presentation and meeting you.
Thanks a lot. Ian, you're quite quiet actually, so maybe I don't know if there's a mic thing.
Yeah, the microphone
we did
not in the optimum place. Is that better?
That's right.
Do you want me to repeat that?
No, I think we got it. It's just for. Do you want to nominate someone else to introduce themselves?
Catherine.
Hello, I'm Catherine. I'm an NEU member, and I do a lot. Was also Secretary of Trades Council on Just Transition. I'll nominate Mela.
Sure. I am Mela Bettega. I am located at Newcastle University, so I'm not in a union yet because I just moved in to the UK. I'm here because I'm working on a project that is kind of exploring the potential of hydrogen in the energy transition. And my role within the project is to kind of bring in more socio-political perspectives to accompany the more techno-economical perspective of the engineers. So I am kind of trying to map out who are the stakeholders, and of course the workers. They're kind of an important part because of the potential upskilling required and all the movements that will be eventually in the whole energy sector. And so I thought unions might be a key actor to understand and to try to involve in the future.
Thanks, Bella. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for that. I think that's it's yeah. I mean, definitely. I mean, yes, workers are a key stakeholder in this. If only more people appreciated that, we'd be in a better position. The question of hydrogen is something that the unions discuss quite a lot, and it's slightly controversial in some areas, but also not controversial in others. So it's a very live debate. I will catch up with you after this, perhaps, to go through some specific stuff. There's a conference coming up that sounds like you'd be useful to attend, and also there's some key folk who I'd like to link you up with. But anyway, let's continue introduction. So do you want to nominate someone to go next?
I'll nominate Richard.
Yep. Hi, I'm Richard Lawley. I'm Green Rep for the PCS within the Deep Disclosure Environment Service in Darlington. So yeah, that's me. I'll pass on to Debbie now.
Hello, I'm Debbie, retired member of UCU, Green Rep for the Yorkshire and Humber branch, and just started on an amazing book by Mike Berners-Lee, Climate Truth, and I think it's going to be tough reading, and none of this business as usual and mucking about at the edges. And I nominate Leanne.
Afternoon, everyone. Oh no, it's not there yet, are we? Good morning, everyone.
I'm Leanne Vickers. I'm a project manager at Leeds City Council in housing. I'm the environmental rep, newly voted in. We had our branch meeting this week for Unite the Union, and very much a newbie. I've done the environmental rep course with Sam before Christmas last year. And I'm shortly about to present the green strategy to my branch members to start work in Leeds City Council, to hopefully highlight that it's not just about planting trees, it's about investing in workers.
Great stuff. Well, thank you for all joining us today. That sounds really interesting, Leanne. We need to, I did sort of promise a catch up with everyone who attended that course, actually, and that's never quite materialized, and I need to do that. That's great. Well, thank you for introducing yourself. We'll so today we're joined by Ian Richardson, who I guess some of you may know. He got in contact a while ago, a couple of months ago, a couple of weeks ago, to make me aware of some of the work he's doing on this idea of catchment stewardship, which some of you may have heard that term before. He explained a bit about that and the way he's coming from it. Sounds very coming at it sounds really interesting, and maybe a useful framing for green activism within trade unions, or green or trade unions as they relate to kind of climate action. Basically, it all sounded very interesting. So I thought, rather than it just sounding interesting and being intriguing, we'd let him speak on it for a little bit. So yeah, I'll hand over to you. I mean, you've done the introductions, I suppose, but if you want to kind of give a bit of your background as well, and then we'll kind of go to your presentation. We'll hear from you in a chunk, and then kind of do questions and comments and discussion afterwards. I think it's probably the best way of doing this. But yeah, over to you. You did send some slides over. Are you able to?
If I can share a screen on Teams, and I can run through them.
Cool.
Thank you, Sam. You've put up a good lot of dashboards there. I'll expect the cards to come out at the end. And Leanne, thank you. Your piece did a good introduction as well. Let me just share my screen. Right. Are you seeing another screen?
Yeah.
So this is Catchment Stewardship. Let me start by asking you a couple of rhetorical questions. And this is primarily focused around the riverscape. What do you enjoy about your local river or nature or something? And what would you like to see improved? Because the future is about change and certainly making things better.
Can I jump in? Because I moved near a river about 4 years ago, and so being near a river is quite new to me. And what I love about being near the river is the wildlife and the birds that pass over my house coming to and from the river. And then when we go down there, being able to see them, which is unusual. It's kind of a new experience for me. But what's really been upsetting about being near a river it floods farmers' fields quite often, and after the water's receded, the line of plastic and rubbish that is on the embankment, and it always makes me feel like I need to panic and pick everything up before the water rises and takes it back in and sucks it back up again until it later will come back onto the banking again. And I always think I need to mobilise everybody to come out and collect it so it goes and it doesn't just at some point go back in again.
And there are many groups around rivers litter picking. So yes, fantastic. I thought you'd nearly stolen my script then.
Sorry.
This is my favourite part of the river. This is the River Tyne, just on the east side of Bywell, where I go swimming with the otters. It's really nice, and it's just replenishing. It's fantastic. But also up the Tyne, and you'll all live on your own rivers, and there are vibrant community groups meeting to support the water and the environment. And mine is Wylam Clean Water. Mella, if you're new to the area, you may or may not know Wylam yet. But I became ill while swimming and became curious about who was responsible for keeping the water clean and nature flourishing. So the catchment is complex, and every stretch of the river is different. It's a natural ecosystem. I presume these words are convenient for you, and you've heard them before, but it presents a classic tragedy of the commons, fragmented stakeholders with no one an overall charge. And eventually, through over-exploitation, this leads to the ecosystem's destruction and collapse by 1,000 cuts. And we'll all see that. There is nobody in overall charge. There is no single person of that system owner that you might get an electricity network that's looking after it. But there are many stakeholders working very diligently, enthusiastically on improvement projects in many places. So Leanne, this comes back to your litter picking and tidying up. So this is why Catchment Stewardship was born, an umbrella group to enable adaptation in the times ahead. So everybody who works and lives in the catchment is a stakeholder and contributes to the water health and flourishing nature. So in Northumberland, the major stakeholder for the water is Tyne. On the Tyne is Northumbrian Water. Northumbrian Water is owned by C.K. Hutchinson Holdings out of Hong Kong and the Cayman Islands. They also used to own the ports on the Panama Canal. So you can see they're not too interested in communities, in the ecology and the nature of water. But that's probably a conversation for later. So Northumbrian Water managed drinking water and sewage under the governance of the regulators Ofwat and the Environment Agency. My view is this model is broken, as demonstrated in extreme cases by Thames Water for financial reasons and Save Windermere for environmental reasons. But there are multiple projects around where we're effectively trashing the planet and using rivers as sewers. So Catchment Stewardship was conceived to provide an umbrella voice for catchment and a collaborative space to bring these parties together. And I call this the 4 entangled strands. Are you seeing a new slide? Yeah, okay. Yeah. So the four pieces are leadership. So there's a stewardship leadership. We capture citizen stories through something called Sense Maker. The stories enable restoration and adaptive change. And this technology is used in smart cities to understand what populations want. A map, a source of truth. What is the evidence that's saying whether we're degrading or improving nature in the catchment? Often there's lots of data, but it's all fragmented, siloed, and hidden behind corporate or paywalls. And then there's a stakeholder collaboration knowledge about learning, storytelling, and working out what to do next. You may have heard of some groups that are operating in this space. There's a group called Ilkley Clean River, but there's also Surfers Against Sewage, which is another reason. Data is coming together, and this is a map produced out of UCL in London. It shows an area of the Tyne in the bottom left and the sewage discharges. It's beginning to build a stronger map, but there's data everywhere, but system knowledge is poor. You know, to make decisions, you need knowledge, insights to be well-founded, and often it's not. People have a monetary reason for not disclosing. So under the umbrella of catchment stewardship, communities can identify place-based issues and come together with citizen science. We've done some DNA testing at Wylam recently. These communities build trust to improve ecology and nature, and allow us to set up more experiments. And this allows us then to influence the major parties like MPs, Northumbrian Water, Environment Agency, and a plethora of them. And this is more important now as the climate crisis bites and we move into the poly crisis. I presume you're all familiar with these types of curves. It's not going down. But another way of looking at it is the donut. Have people seen the donuts before?
Yep.
Okay. So this is where the darker outer ring is the ecological ceiling, what the planet can cope with, and the social foundation is the inner ring, and there's a Goldilocks in the middle, which is the safe and just space for humanity. We're not doing very well at stopping the tipping points. You know, if you look at 2023, 9 boundaries have been assessed and 6 crossed. But equally, you look at what's happening in California in January, the hottest month on record, and the amount of destruction was immense. Was estimated to be over 95 billion, but I've seen bigger and smaller figures of that. Mitigation would have been cheaper. If California had put in place mechanisms to inhibit the fire and protect the buildings, as some residents did, then actually there wouldn't have been that destruction. So this is a failure of governance. And the UK equivalent of this is how we're trashing the peat moors. Familiar with peat moors? Yeah, no. Probably you must have peat moors in Italy. So peat moors is usually the land on top of the fells, the highlands. They've been growing for hundreds of years and a good carbon sink, but some of them are beginning to release carbon. So there is no planet B. If we're to be good ancestors, we must ensure that our environment flourishes. So for me, this is the join of the work and home communities together treat as a whole. The predominant political economic system for the last 50 years has been as extractive of our communities and environment, and we're now reaping the consequences. Now that we're breaking 1.5 degrees C, we will require to adapt and create resilience in an unstable future. Look at the global events of fires, floods, agricultural collapse and population movements, wars and land grabs. But most importantly, catchment stewardship provides a space for hope to flourish where it is most important, in our communities. So that sets the scene how I was at Christmas with this. But then at Christmas, instead of just concentrating on the water, the UN produced a report called the IPBES, which developed 5 elements that were key part of catchments. And these are here in the red box: biodiversity, water, food, health, and climate change. And then, but adding on to create the whole catchment, you end up with business and community, the built environment, and energy, which makes the whole situation a lot more complex, but actually more representative of the whole catchment. So it's not just water, it'll be soil health. Where are the best trees? Have we got enough trees? How's the peat doing, etc. And picking up on the adaptation, some of the stories we have to tell is we have to make climate action real. I'm not going to go through all these, but actually people want action, and the consistency with polls suggests that 60% of people are worried about extreme heat and flooding. So catchment stewardship begins to pull out climate populism. So what is it we can do and make happen now? I do not understand why we're not insulating the poor quality homes in this country. That'll make people's lives better and save the use of fossil fuels, which are becoming more volatile. And I think one reason for that is this type of curve. Am I speaking to the converted? So basically the pay and compensation curve has been relatively level, yet the productivity curve has been great. And this is the asset class who are taking wealth out of communities. And therefore we end up with increasing inequality and hollowed out communities. And if we're to enable the communities to respond to the climate crisis, we need new mechanisms. And even the government has been defunding these sectors. If you look at the graph on the right, departments which are responsible for communities and the environment have had their fundings cut since 2009. So we're the first generation to feel the sting of climate change, and we're the last generation that can do something about it. And I resort back to my first question about what would you like to see improved? And Leanne, I don't know whether you've got any immediate comments, and then I'll show a couple of slides to say why I've come to the TUC with the ability to broaden the remit of the TUC. Shall I just carry on doing that, Sam?
Yeah, let's do that, and then we'll reflect at the end.
So, because as members of the union, you'll live somewhere. You work in a different organisation, different place. But actually, for your life to be enriched, work needs to be strong. But equally, you want a safe environment to live in for your children to grow up in, and therefore there's this mesh I've created, which is both encapsulates what the union does at a workplace, but equally how it could be used in place-based. So Sam, this is another network of population of people to come together, but to be focused around their village, their catchment, to support what's happening. And finally, I don't know whether people are familiar with George Monbiot. So yep. George Monbiot suggests that if you have a toxic story, which we have with neoliberalism, then actually we need to replace it with something different. And this is just my crafting of where the heroes are. And the heroes are in this room. They're in our communities. I struggle with the language a little bit for some of this, but it's, you know, it can be redrafted, but I think it gets the essence across. Do you want me to read it?
You can do. I was just looking through it. Yeah, go on. Yeah, read it out.
So, in the Invisible Doctrine, George Monbiot goes through a number of different stories that begin to build this picture. So, disorder afflicts the lands, and the same pattern is there as in fairy tales. Causes the powerful and nefarious forces of the economic elite who have captured the world's wealth and are destroying the environment, excessive consumption, and using the channels of disinformation to brainwash communities and disguise right from wrong. Creating a mindset of scarcity so that collectively we do things which are destructive and inhumane. And this is probably me, such as Boris Brexit and Trump, the American coup, while using scapegoats, othering to distract and obfuscate their true purpose of accumulating more wealth. But the heroes of the story, the enabling state supported by working and middle class people, will contest this disorder. It will fight those powerful forces by redistributing wealth through spending public money on public goods and services, will create income and jobs, restoring harmony to the land and flourishing nature. Individual citizens who can distinguish right from wrong and recognize the power of their local communities in creating a mindset of abundance, stewarding wealth and restoring our ecology, ensuring that we all benefit from the plenty we possess. This generosity will be demonstrated to those who are less fortunate, fleeing from persecution and climate and ecological disaster. Probably very topical when we're talking about demonstrate to those who are less fortunate after what the government seems to have been doing recently. And I think needlessly, because there's plenty of money. So why are they grubbing around for 5 billion? I don't know. Oh, sorry. So I think that's uplifting and provides hope. and a sense of purpose, and joins together the strands of what needs to be done. If you enjoy my slides, I've got a few more, I think, but I think we've probably had enough.
Okay, no, that's good. Thank you very much. It's quite dense. There's a lot there, and I mean, obviously, you can sort of see where your thinking is evolved from particular authors and particular ways of thinking, which I think probably those in the room will have recognised a lot of that language and thinking anyway. I thought that was really interesting. Shall we? Yeah, we'll open up to comments, thoughts, questions. I'll just say hi to Ellen, who joined us during that presentation. Right, we'll go to Richard first.
Yeah, so it's not from a union perspective I'll create here. I've actually got another job as well. I'm a borough councillor in Darlington. So there's a lot of crossover with some of the stuff you were saying as a borough councillor rather than a union person, because I've dealt with Northumbrian Water directly. And presented it to, because I'm on the planning committee for the borough council as well, so they've actually presented to the borough council and things like that. And I think one of the main issues with this kind of thing is you rely on developers to do the right thing, and they're never going to do the right thing because they're in it for money. They don't care about the outcomes, like such as insulating homes, putting solar panels on things, or doing the right thing to make homes better for people. They want to do things as cheaply as possible, for as little money as possible, and take up as little land as they can as well, so they get the biggest bang for their buck essentially. And that's kind of what we're fighting against partially at the moment, because they want to build 500 houses in through a woodland in Darlington currently, and we're kind of trying to fight against that. But I think, unfortunately, the money's not on our side, so I think it's a fight we may well lose. But again, it's about destroying nature. There's a river that runs directly near that as well. And it's just money over kind of any kind of environmental protections. Even though we've kind of agreed a climate emergency within the council, that's not enough to kind of stop them destroying all this woodland and the area and everything else. It's ridiculous. I think part of it comes from the fact that local borough councils are massively underfunded, and the borough council are using council tax farming as a way to try and essentially fund the tax and everything they need to do as part of a borough council. So part of that is what is causing the knock-on effect of them then destroying nature essentially, because the government aren't properly funding local councils and providing them with the tools to do what they need to do. So I think, sorry to go on, I'll cut it short in a second because I'm rambling about borough council stuff, but I think the burden on borough councils is largely from adult and children's social care burden that they've got, which makes up 70% of our budget. So we've got 30% to essentially do the rest of the things that the borough council needs to do, which doesn't leave a lot essentially to do the street cleaning, empty the bins, and do everything that you expect from the borough council. So it's that's why the kind of push towards trying to build more and more houses to get the council tax coming in. But they're never going to win this in this situation. And I imagine, given a long enough time, give it 5-10 years, the borough council will probably go belly up because they won't have enough money to kind of survive. But yeah, it's not a great situation to be in.
Can I respond to that?
Yeah, go on then.
Richard. Yeah, no, that I see that happening in Northumberland, where the council is gradually retreating because it's not funded, and part of the catchment stewardship is using SenseMaker to capture citizen stories to provide a foil against this defunding, this apatheticness that's coming from disempowerment, because you've got the community there, but you've got to have the community there to support change and advocate it. You know, and you recall where citizens have come together as a body to make change happen. It has happened. There is no shortage of money. You go to people like Richard Murphy, and I've extracted this slide from Gary Stevenson's talk. Have you heard of Gary Stevenson?
No, I don't know.
The economist. He's getting quite a lot of airtime at present, talking about he was a trader and made millions by betting on the inequality that was taking place in the UK, and he's now advocating against it. So this this chart at the top talks about a time when actually there was a better balance between populations and corporate wealth after World War II. And over the 1970s and 80s, the wealthy began to extract more money from the population. And now, where we are at present, and I put a question mark out of Labour, because I think Labour seemed to be following the same neoliberal trends and mimicking America. Well, we know where that's going to lead, don't we? And it's not in a natural environment. It's not in better conditions for communities and workers. And therefore that, I think, is it's the inequality. And someone like Richard Murphy, I didn't put it on the, anyways, when you get the slides, there's links into Richard Murphy and the multiple ways that money can be raised from just governments doing things in different ways. I think the most heinous one in my mind is actually the relationship between the Treasury and the Bank of England. And by the Bank of England doing stuff differently, it could say raise 100 billion. But there's some odd relationship going on there, which I think should be explored. So, yeah, no, Richard, very right. I think, and Catchment Stewardship, the concept of it was designed to capture those stories, to push, I suppose, make democracy stronger, to foil against these nefarious forces, as the restoration stories would call them. I'm taking part in an assembly this weekend, which is where people are coming together in an assembly to support change in their local environment. So again, using people's stories, the weight of people, because we have a huge amount of income in the sense of our future work to use, and it's just got to be not siphoned off to the corporates, but actually used to put elements in place to protect environment and communities. So that's the reason for coming to the union, to grow that network, so that as well as advocating in your workplace, actually you can also support your local communities. And actually we probably spend half our time in our local communities and half our time in a workplace, and this will broaden the reach of the union, which will in turn strengthen them. Sorry, I probably rambled a bit there.
No, it's fine.
Yeah,
it's all interesting stuff. I mean, I do want.
Sorry, I was
go
going to say we do have a huge community action group in regards to the destruction of the woodland. I think there's about 300 people that came to a demonstration about it. So we are kind of trying to protest against it, but the kind of money and the power isn't on our side, unfortunately. Even though there's more of us, it's difficult to kind of fight against legislation and kind of that kind of thing. But we are trying, definitely.
No, absolutely, but it's all coming together. And Gary Stevenson, Richard Murphy, Grace Blakely is someone else I shout out in one of my slides. She's just done a talk in the local market town as a Zoom debate, and she very clearly in 20 minutes talks about the power systems that are going on between people and the corporates and government, and actually it's that needs disrupting. And well, that's it. So this is an interesting slide. Are you still seeing my slides?
Yeah.
Must be.
Yeah.
So here we are, child poverty. We're the worst of this selection of countries. I think it's outrageous. At least people have stopped celebrating the fact that we have food banks in this country.
Catherine, you've got your hand up. We'll go to you. But you are on mute.
Yeah, I was just trying to find a link on our website. I just wanted to say that one of the things that Wakefield, Just Transition Wakefield, got involved in quite early on, 2020, and we met up with a guy that was really obsessed with the footpath, down by the Hepworth. And so that became one of our projects that's really involved people. So we've got in the floods in 2007, there'd been a part of the riverbank had fallen away, and so the canal side, at least the riverbank footpath or where it links into the canal, had disappeared into the river at that point, and then the pilings had made it impossible, and gradually the farmer had sort of taken ownership back of the newly aligned thing. So there is no longer a canal footpath or a riverside footpath, and so there is a project now that we have been working on very thoroughly, and there's 2 people are leading on there, but it's got a whole load of extra people involved. And we're trying to get a cycle path from Horbury to Castleford going through that missing link. But it's been a key way of energising the campaign, and some people are really involved in that, and they see it as fundamental. And the possibility of getting students from Castleford to be able to cycle to Wakefield College and things like that is one of those projects that we're doing. So I agree, this sort of river catchment and along the river routes can be a really energising for communities. So I just thought I'd put that in.
It's worth saying before we come back that Just Transition Wakefield is sort of doing this kind of catchment stewardship kind of thing, this alliance of multiple different organisation actors in one organisation that's kind of recognising. I mean, it's obviously got the trade unions in it, but it's also got, you know, Friends of the Earth, it's got women's groups and all sorts in, you know, and the ear of the council as well. And it seems to, I mean, it's I can't speak highly enough. I mean, it's you're doing a really great job, but it's great to see part of the trade unions be part of that conversation and kind of doing that link of, you know, degradation of nature and climate change and trade union activism and health and safety and, you know, community action all being wrapped up in one big thing, which I think is kind of what Ian's imagining, or the kind of the catchment stewardship cell that was at the top there. And so I mean, yes, that's a good example, but a lot of what you're doing is really good as well. I just want to underline that.
Thank you for that. I can't find the link on the website. I find our website impossible to manage, you know, to locate anything in and out. But other people do manage it apparently, but it doesn't work in my head. So do look us up, Just Transition Wakefield, and I might find it for you, the relevant link.
Thank you. I was trying to send a file with some of the citizen stories that I'd captured on the time, but I can't do it through the chats. Can you unlock it, Sam?
Oh, it's not deliberately locked. It will potentially. Maybe I'll fiddle away, but
I'll send
talk to it.
I'll send it later. But no, Catherine, and because for me the catchment has a natural geographical area that people probably live in and have some affinity for, that you get all sorts of projects springing up which can engage people. And I think as we go into the hard times with the climate crisis, that actually we want that community to be working and resilient and doing things together to support them and give them hope in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got a link in here, but it's not the right link. I can't find everything, but it has to be ways of getting people so that they feel like there's hope in there.
And because it's an umbrella organisation, I'd be quite happy for it to bump up into the local authority or the regional authority or something if someone was going to do it. But I think the mechanism of capturing citizen stories, I suppose, democratising catchment, provides that power to get things changed, as opposed to just relying on Westminster.
I'll come in there. Absolutely. We fundamentally believe in Just Transition Wakefield that the cavalry aren't coming and we'll have to do it ourselves. So we're trying to do as much as we can, but we link into the local authority at as many levels as we can, because they're the accessing, and they can convene meetings that we couldn't convene meetings about. So it's really helpful to engage them in doing things.
And that's the nature of stewardship. It's not about doing, it's about bringing parties together, providing that safe space and using the resources that are around. It's just a shame that so much of the resource that goes into water and the catchment is captured within the corporate boundaries of the water company. And my experience is that the water company and the Environment Agency are not very good at disclosing information, or it's a pain in the neck to try and get it.
Yeah. Leanne?
I think the sad challenge that we have, going back to Richard's case study around do we choose houses over woodlands and rivers, is that the majority of the public are going to say houses. They are going to think about the homelessness and the housing crisis and how many thousands of people, millions of people are on the social housing register waiting for houses. And they are going to think houses are more important. And that's a real sad challenge for us. And how we say you shouldn't have to choose between the two. We're led to believe we have to choose between the two because of the messaging in the media and the way these things are sold to us. But it's not choosing between the two. But that's what the majority of us feel is our options: rivers and woodlands or houses.
Ian, do you want to reflect on that, or does anyone else?
Yeah, it reflects a very binary decision making, which the media can understand and politicians can sell, which is very neoliberal, without recognizing the complexity of the catchment. So it's finding the most appropriate places for houses while not destroying least nature, because we do need houses and we do need the population to be living in these areas to make it right. But that's where the collaboration process comes around at the beginning. But also,
just come back in. Sorry, I was going to start. Sorry, it's finished. I was going to say I'll come back.
No, Richard, do, because I was thinking of you here. Yes, I think the decision making at a local government level.
I was going to say. So in Darlington, they're building a lot of houses. So they've set to build quite a few. What I would say in regards to those houses, they aren't social housing. They're 4 and 5 bedroom townhouses they're building a lot of the time, which are purchased from people in London or other areas of the south, because Darlington is one of the cheapest places in the country to buy a house. So it's much cheaper for someone in London to come and buy a 4 or 5 bedroom townhouse in Darlington than it probably is to buy like a 1 bedroom box flat in London. So the houses that are being purchased by people that don't even live in the area, and the purchase to then rent out at extortionate rates to people within the town, probably, that anyone who needs homes that are probably on the housing list won't even be able to afford, because I think there's a cap, isn't there, on how much you get housing benefit, so it won't be anywhere near what they can afford with housing benefit. But yeah, they're not building social housing a lot of the time. There's very, very little social housing actually being built. I think out of the 1,000 or so houses Darlington have built, about 20 are social housing out of about 1,000. So that tells you the kind of problem that we've actually got in regards to councils being able to convince developers or having the funds themselves to be able to build social housing, because they don't have any of that at the moment. Again, it's a massive problem from government, and the money's going to the wrong people in the system, essentially. That there's no incentive for them to do that. And again, in regards to building in the right places, there used to be a brownfield fund from the government to build on brownfield sites, which would be much more which would be much better for us essentially. If they build on brownfield ex-industrial sites, they used to get a boost to build on those sites. That's long since gone regarding housing. So it's much easier for a developer to go and build on a green field than it is to build on an ex-industrial site. 'Cause there's less work for them to do. They don't have to kind of get rid of any hazardous chemicals, do any groundwork before they can actually put a house in place. A field is much easier to dig up and chuck a house on than it is to kind of try and get like an ex-factory turned into housing. So yeah, you need to make it easy for people to do the right thing essentially, and the government aren't willing to do that. They're happy to let it just continue as it has been, and it does need higher at a government level because councils don't have the power in themselves, I don't think, to do this. They're kind of beholden to government targets and government workings. And the housing policy is built on the National Planning Policy Framework, which in itself doesn't give us anything. There's a bit of greenwashing in it, but it doesn't really give us any teeth to kind of do anything properly. And as Ian also alluded to, the Environment Agency have been stripped back to its bare bones, where they're kind of just, they're not really worth the paper they're written on anymore, really, I don't think. A lot of the people that were doing a good job in that field have been long since gone, or they've been so disenfranchised that they've probably left. So, yeah, there's a lot of that as well that's happened within the local government area. So, yeah.
Not to be a downer, but
sorry, sorry, I'm not. But like I said, there is a lot of people on. I mean, I'm elected as a Green Party councillor in Darlington, so that tells you something that there is an appetite for Green people within these areas. We've got 7 Green councillors in Darlington, so that's something at least that the local people within Darlington are convinced by the Green agenda and that people need to do things differently. So there is a turning of the tide, hopefully, which we need to see. Obviously on a larger scale to push towards a better way of doing things, because there's no difference between the Conservative councillors and the Labour councillors in Darlington, really. They're both serving the same people, trying to do the same things, essentially. It's all about the economy and trying to get as much money in as possible, and regardless of whatever else happens. Whereas we try to present an alternative solution and try and do things the right way rather than the cheap, quick way, essentially, that doesn't actually benefit everyone and doesn't. If you look at it in the round, like donut economics, for example, there's no benefit to doing things the cheap, quick way because it doesn't have any lasting benefits. Essentially, we'll end up paying for it further down the line anyway. So, yeah.
I wondered if, just before we come back to it, Ian, I wondered if you were going to reflect, but being on these on like the planning board or whatever it is that you're on in the council, I wondered if you would say about the nature of decision making in local government, and to some extent in central government as well. It's, even if you do see it in the round, as you're describing yourselves doing, the issue that's put to you is, can we build these houses, or can we flatten this thing? And your answer is only no or yes, really. I mean, you could sort of say yes, but with these mitigations. But it's polarized on two sides, right? And it makes this kind of inclusive, this catchment level, this kind of holistic, this community level decision making quite difficult to employ in a local government setting. I've sort of put words in your mouth, but I think I'm sort of taking that out.
You're exactly right. So I've seen people crying in planning meetings and stuff being approved because they're that upset that the council's approved these things. But the reason that the council has probably approved half of these things is because they're waiting for the developer to come back and take them to court and kind of charge them an absolute fortune, which unfortunately it's the reality of the situation a lot of the time. They daren't say no to a lot of these things because the kind of the monetary aspect that's involved in it. We try and present as much as we can in regards to pushing to make things the best they can be a lot of the time, which isn't an ideal situation to be in. But we have got on the site they're going to build, where they're kind of destroying part of a forest. We made it very, very difficult and very expensive for them to build those houses because we've got a document in place that says they have to be built to kind of passive house standards, some of the houses on there. So that's a very, very high standard for housing to be built. And we've got that written into the documentation around around the houses that are due to be built on there. So we're not going to let them wriggle out of that with any kind of very easily, because that's officially documented that they need to build to Passive House standard. So at least it's not ideal. We don't really want the house to be built in the first place. If they are going to be built, at least it's going to cost the developer a lot of money to do so. And the people that buy those houses will actually have houses that are fit for purpose, rather than houses that, I mean, the new houses that are being built are of terrible quality a lot of the time. They're built as cheaply as possible and need repair within 2 or 3 years, which is ridiculous for a brand new house, really. It's not on at all. But again, it's chuck them up as quickly as possible, get as much money out of them as you can, and like ride off in the sunset for the developers. They don't care less. But yeah, I mean, the local planning, essentially, we're outvoted a lot of the time on these issues because there's 2 green councillors sit on the planning committee. There's others that are kind of sympathetic to our cause that also sit on the planning committee, but the majority of them are from the ruling group, and the ruling group want to build houses. So essentially, we're outvoted every term. We make our points, which are very valid arguments, and argue against building houses in very, very different situations, and we get public engagement on these things as well. But because the borough council are afraid of being sued or want to kind of push for the council tax fireman I described earlier, generally we're voted down, and the decision goes against us a lot of the time. We have stopped stuff going through or I've put stuff in place before where I've got I've made sure there's a cycle network within some houses that are being built, because they've got a green tick box they have on housing developments that there has to be a cycling infrastructure in place. So I've kind of looked into it in a lot of detail and made sure that they're actually fulfilling those requirements, because although they tick the box, a lot of the time they don't bother doing it because the council doesn't hold them to account. So I'll make sure that if they try to tick that box, they are actually doing what they said they're going to do, and the community is benefiting somewhat from the housing that we don't really want, but at least we're getting something out of it. But it's an ongoing battle, to be honest. But we like I said, we try and engage with the public as much as we can and make sure the public know what we're doing. And a lot of these meetings are filmed as well, so people know what's happening in the chamber, because a lot of it's behind closed doors. Even though they're open to the public don't attend because they don't know about the meetings, don't care enough to kind of come to them. But they're filmed and posted online now as well, so people can then share them and go, have you seen this? This is what's going on. So come election time, those councillors that are there going, yeah, let's build more houses, they're going, this is what they said during this meeting. Vote with your feet, kind of thing. So
that's interesting. Ian, do you want to come back on?
Yeah, and again, I come back because I experienced these problems in trying to understand who was looking after the river, and it's getting that community backing, that building that community support and agitation, so that actually, yes, they might not be able to come to the meetings, Richard, but they're behind you looking for different solutions. But then it runs further in not believing these perpetual messages of scarcity that are told to us, and creating that level of abundantness. I've got another slide here, which I think is in the pack, which builds on that. This is from Richard Murphy, who you may or may not be aware of, but he talks in very good small segments about economics and is constantly debunking what's happening by the government or alternative constructive ways of doing things. And it requires local authorities to be pushing back to government and saying, actually, release some of this money. Why are we not building on the greenfield site? Or, I don't know what help citizens could give you to support, make you more effective. But I
was going to say, to be honest, they do help us a lot. They look into these planning applications and find things that we sometimes miss. So they do help us in trying to oppose these things. And we do have the public support to kind of make sure the council are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Because, like I said, there's only 7 of us, so we can't be at every turn and read everything. So we do have people helping us in that respect, that kind of looking into things and trying to find fault with things and trying to find ways to kind of make sure these things don't go through. So we do have a lot of public engagement in that regard. In regards to the far right, what I would say is I've spoken to people on the doorstep that think about voting reform, and you just go, so you support a privatized healthcare structure then, do you? You want to pay for healthcare when you're an old person. It's like that's what reform stand for. Did you not realize that? It's an easy kind of thing to say, and I mean, a lot of the refugee stuff comes on the doorstep as well, which is a bit annoying. But I'd basically, a lot of them support people from Ukraine coming in, but they don't support others coming in. So I just highlight the Ukraine factor, the fact that we had to change the immigration system to allow people from Ukraine to come into the country as well. So it's about kind of changing the rhetoric around what the far right are trying to kind of put out there, because a lot of it is nonsense, and people only read the kind of headline without looking deeper under the surface, I think, a lot of the time with these kind of parties.
But equally, I was going to say, I attended a meeting last week about creating a UK-based digital platforms for social media, which I think is one of the problems. We're now losing control of who can see what on social media because it's from America.
What I'll do, we've discussed this in quite a lot of detail, and it's great, and it's rich discussion. It's good to do this. I'll just draw it back to we're trade unions, right? So it'd be good.
Apologies, yeah, sorry.
Just no. It's useful to get all this context and this kind of thinking, and we're obviously broader than that particular role. But if we draw it back to that, so part of this was this very satisfying little graphic about the interplay of workplaces and communities, basically. It's something we've talked about before here. It's something that it's sort of integral if you're thinking about, green activism within trade unions, just because pollution and climate change and inequality and everything else doesn't stop at the factory gate, right? But I wonder if anyone wants to reflect on this or think about what this kind of framing with all this I guess theory behind it could mean for their organizing, or any thoughts that jump out of this from this diagram, or that kind of interplay of the role of trade unions within this kind of thinking.
Can I just ask what polycrisis means?
In essence, there's multiple crises going on now, driven by the climate crisis, the money crisis. So it's multiple crises happening together. Usually, governments have one crisis at a time they deal with. Actually, we've got a soil crisis, we've got a water pollution crisis, we've got a energy crisis, we've got a homeless crisis. We've got food banks, we've got a food crisis. So it's trying to build the picture that it's just not one thing; it's systemic, holistic.
And we've seen that a little bit in what Richard's been saying about it being, because there is a housing crisis, but there's also an environmental crisis. And the way they play off against each other, finding a solution to both those problems at once, just makes it a lot more complex.
So my original ask for coming and presenting and sort of coming up to the TUC for this was to actually say there's an opportunity for the TUC to enrich its offering by both covering the workplace and then supporting people in the home, in their domestic life parts. And the other bit that led to me was actually, I think, am I right in saying that union membership has declined quite a bit in this country over the couple of decades?
Over the long durée, yes, it has declined. It's maybe not declining right now, but
yeah. And I read an article that had correlated the ability of the leadership of the left to be stronger was because they had a good platform for the unions. So this was a way of growing the union platform and therefore encouraging leaders from the unions to come up through politics because they'd been well grounded. So and it's important. No point having a good workplace if actually you've just trashed the environment in your workplace, because actually the organizations that we traditionally rely on have been captured or defunded to make them as good as useless. The Environment Agency, local authorities.
Richard?
Yeah, sorry, I won't come in about council stuff again. It's something else this time. It's about something we did last year is we get volunteer days as part of our. I don't know if everyone else gets that kind of thing. We get a certain amount of volunteer days to use as part of being in the PCS, and we use those to go and do stuff in the community. So it's about that community engagement piece. We planted bulbs in a park and took photos of ourselves and posted them on social media and showed people that we were engaged in the community and being involved in the community and kind of getting out there. So I don't know if anyone else gets volunteer days to use within the community or do those kind of things, but I would, yeah, if you can get involved in that kind of thing, that's a good kind of community outreach kind of thing that show that you're active in your local community or getting others involved in those kind of things.
I think it's a really useful thing to do. We did when I was a green rep in a council. Actually, we did. We called it a pocket wood, a small wood that we planted. We call it the unison pocket wood. So it's that kind of. They didn't give it to us as volunteer days. We had to take it without telling anyone that we weren't in the office. But but yeah, no, I mean those kind of initiatives are really good. Leanne?
That might be quite a quick win actually for unions because so in Leeds City Council, each member of staff are given 10 hours. Now my team, we go use our 10 hours collectively as a team bonding stroke volunteering day, but we do always pick environmental projects to go out and do, and then we promote that. But that might be something that from a union point of view we encourage our members to do, to actually use those 10-hour volunteering days to do something within the community with a green focus. And we could do that quite easily because we have our members, we have a circular with our members. So we're reminding them that it's there and to pick something in Leeds that's addressing climate issues. And then I think you're right, Richard, promoting it. And whichever banner you promote it under, we have got avenues of staff communications where we can then promote what we've done and encourage that ripple effect of other staff going and doing it. So that's a really good idea, actually. I picked that one up.
Stuff. We don't have a huge amount of time left, so I'll draw it to a close there, but there's a lot of food for thought. And you've already sent me these slides. Are they, without looking back through the slide pack, is that the one? Does that include all the slides you showed? Ian?
Yes, I think
Yeah,
so.
okay. In which case I'll circulate that to members as well, so everyone can have a look through. There are additional slides in there with some extra detail that folk may want to have a look at. But thank you very much, Ian. That's really appreciated. If we move to the next bit, so it's a pretty loose agenda, but updates and news is the next section. So it's just space for if anyone wants to reflect on any activities that have happened over the last couple of months since we last met, and that other people may want to be involved, may want to be appraised of. Catherine and Ellen, I noticed, I mean, being that you're here, I wonder if you want to talk about the things I know you've done, the Energy Strategy Day with Ellen and the NEU training and potentially the worker-led transition thing we did a couple of weekends ago, Catherine. Maybe we can start there. Should we go to Ellen?
Yeah, actually, what I was just mulling over how to articulate it, but talking about the Energy Campaign Strategy Day that we had in Leeds a few weeks ago, which was aimed at both trade unionists and social movements, community activists, anybody, and defining energy in a very, very broad sense. So very much, the way that we use it, like houses, transport as well, not just what where primary energy comes from, although that as well. And it's interesting. What I was thinking about was the way that one of the things that really emerged from that is that the really key areas that we need to be coming together and campaigning around. The biggest users of energy are buildings, space heating, and surface transport. And both of those things are things that kind of beautifully intersect the community and the workplace aspect. Transport, very, very obviously, I think, because it's an easy one in the sense that you've got people working transport. Bus driving is well unionised, that kind of thing. And there are lots of issues around pay and conditions in that sector, but also it's very much a community concern, and it's a concern for other people in workplaces, because most people have to commute to work and they're affected by air pollution as they do so, and traffic congestion and so on. So and housing, buildings retrofit is a bit more tricky because of the kind of chaos of the industry and the kind of that it's seen very much as a domestic thing. But I think this is so what I was actually thinking about as other people were speaking. I've just last night there was a launch meeting of a retrofit campaign involving the Peace and Justice Project, Acorn, MedAct, and Fuel Poverty Action, which is a fantastic initiative. And I'm about to write up my sort of thoughts on that for the Greener Jobs Alliance site. But one of the major things I think that was missing, and sort of, it was a short meeting and this is all to play for, we can still intervene in this, but what was really missing was a discussion of the role of the unions in this campaign. And clearly there's a very big role, because it's a massive source of potential jobs, and there's a huge training. Everybody in this room knows this. I don't need to repeat it. What I'm obviously, that's a campaign that's largely targeted at the national policy level, and then here we're talking about the activity very much at the local grassroots level, and to me, it's not about an either or there. It's about how you marry those two things, So what's going on in my head at the minute is how we marry those two things in relation to those particular campaigns that do naturally lend themselves to collaborations between unions and wider civil society. Both at the grassroots doing stuff at a neighbourhood level, but also very much, I think, do need the kind of mass movement element to address the policy level and how we use finance and stuff. So if that's not too incoherent, that is my offering for the moment.
That's good. It's great to have those reflections. That event last night, we did just to square the circle on trade unions being involved with that event. The TC has been working closely with that campaign, although we're not a signatory to it. We've just been advising and helping. So I think that's a key thing, that there needs to be a way for it to make sure it's actually in workplaces as well, and actually in local authorities. I think in London it is going to be more of a local authority campaign to push successful local authorities doing this. But
and just to say, the Greener Jobs Alliance and the Campaign Against Climate Change Trade Union Group are both now, at least on paper, are partners to that. But I think that our role will be sort of very much to see how obviously to look at the trade union aspects and a lot of I think a lot of people. I've just been going through the chat from that meeting, which was very, very long, and a lot of useful bits mixed up with just people ranting, so understandably, and it is like a lot of people are doing stuff that is quite community embedded. So I think there's a real, what we would really like is a mass, a national programme funded from progressive taxation. That's the most efficient way to do it. It's so obvious, and we're so far from that people aren't even suggesting it, because they're thinking that's so pie in the sky, we'll never get. But to me, if you don't have the radical demand, you don't win anything. But it's how to pull all this together. It's a bit of a headache, but it's quite exciting. Check.
Thank you. No, it's yeah. Has anyone else got any updates? Catherine, did you want to reflect on those bits?
Yeah, I was involved in the Energy Day, and that was very, very interesting and illuminating. I will say this is meant to be a sort of a unions thing, so I can say something about the eco-educators and the NEU sort of action in there. We've been discussing recycling forever, and this sort of goes from bottom level to top level sort of thing here. Recycling in classrooms, it would be really good to have separate recycling bins. That piece of legislation, actually, it's been worked at from classrooms all the way through, and there is legislation that comes into force on the 31st of March. Some of the people that have been twitting about it forever, i.e. the West Yorkshire eco-educators, some of us, the ones in Wakefield and Kirklees or whatever, aren't going to be able to use that legislation because our particular recycling plant has got exemptions because they separate in the plant at South Kirby. But for Leeds and Bradford and lots of other places, as of the 31st of March, recycling targets come in and apply to all employers of over 10, that they should be separated, waste should be separated in, from the classroom through the organisation. So that's a positive, except that for some of the very individual, very good campaigners about recycling, they're not going to be doing it until 2038, I think it is. It's a long time. It's a very long time that we'll be not recycling in classrooms for. I spoke about this. I did an eco for a new professional young workers weekend, conference. I did a green reps. What can they do for as young workers? And really good attendance at that session, and so I said, how eco are your schools? And the first thing that every one of those young workers, young teachers said was, well, we don't even do recycling in our classroom. And I just thought, oh, it matters to people. So but we did a good session, lots of interested people on that. It'll be really good to see things working further. We're going to be I attend JCC meeting, and we're talking about heat strikes, not heat strikes, but we keep talking about temperature. That's a real key issue there. So we keep on going. It takes forever, and Ofsted are in this week, so the meeting's been delayed again. So this is what happens. But we are planning it's NEU conference in April. And so there will be there'll be a climate stall in the exhibition. There will be a fringe meeting or two. So there are things happening and there are motions that will be presented. And I will do a motion at regional TUC. Is it just tomorrow? Tomorrow, Saturday about that. So which is trying to get the Year of Climate Action that Unison and PCS proposed last year at Congress. We're going to try and put detail into that onto the motion that we're proposing on Saturday morning. Thank you.
Great, that's good to hear. I was going to mention the Year of Climate Action. So it keeps being talked about. The current thinking is from various unions, various groups, is that this should start in September, October time and run for a year through the academic year, essentially, to kind of correspond with COP 30, is that the number we're up to? Yeah. Through to COP 31. It's all quite ephemeral, right? There's various kind of ideas in the air, but it's not an official year from anyone yet, I think. And so it would be interesting. I'm just kind of raising it out there because we don't have a huge amount of time, but I'm just pushing it out there that this could inform branches, right, as well as regions, as well as national approaches. So if that's an event that's happening, a year that's happening, then it might be useful for us to think about that. Ellen, is that on that topic?
Yeah.
Shall I say it first, Ellen?
Yes,
Shall I
do,
say?
yes, yes.
So we're putting into the With Banners Held High programme, I believe. I've to meeting tonight, but I have talked it through with 3 people, so I'm confident on it. There will be on Wednesday. There will be an online meeting. On Wednesday, the 7th of May, there'll be an online meeting about planning the year of climate action and what it would look like. I've co-hosted this subject to agreement, but I have talked it through with several people at the With Banners Held High meeting that is tonight. So that's what we, yeah. So go, Ellen, now fill in.
Yeah, that's what. Well, I was going to say that, but also that we're also going to be promoting this year of action very strongly at upcoming trade union or relevant things like this We Demand Change conference that's coming up, and get some leaflets in time at the regional TUC. But I've been thinking a lot about how the 2 campaigns that I've just been talking about, the retrofit and public transport campaigns, can be part of that, because it's one of the things that the motion that was passed at TUC last year that gave rise to this also has a little clause that says in collaboration with, I forget the exact wording, but it's specifically intended to try to break down this kind of sorry if this sounds crude, but sort of get back in your lane sort of mentality from some, not all, I will have to say, but some sections of the trade unions that don't want kind of wider civil society having having opinions about what should happen, so I mean, we need all of these things will be, all the things that happen will be, I guess, largely workplace. There'll be place-based, workplace-based, sector-based, whatever. But there are these cross-cutting things that are also the things that that intersect with community involvement. And so I think thinking a lot about how those 2 particular campaigns can be brought into this in a way that's very relevant and really builds a lot more power for those campaigns.
Good stuff. I think if a dedicated year to this, that, and if enough people know about, could be really impactful. And it's great that that there are these efforts being made, but then also organic action from particular branches or whatever is still to be encouraged, right? And yeah, I mean, Unison, as Debbie's put in the chat, have announced this, and particular unions are obviously pushing on this, but yeah, it's just to flag it as something that's approaching and needs a bit of planning for. Not that that's not already being done, but for those that where it isn't being done, that more the merrier. I'll just also we've only got a few minutes left, but we did do this worker-led transition workshop that I think is worth just telling people about a couple of weekends ago. It was set up by Jake Woodier and Hilary Wainwright, which are names that some of you may know, and brought together a lot of key people in the worker-led transition, the green unionist space, to talk about these issues, about green unionism, about how we take it forward, what the challenges are, and then potentially what are the solutions to that. I think it was a really good day. So it's just, there's not really been any any media will shout about it. It's an ongoing group that will continue to discuss, and there's, I think, a few projects are going to emerge from that initial workshop. So hopefully more will be heard about that. But I just wanted to flag that it was an impactful thing that happened in our region in Leeds, a national event that was really worthwhile. I just also want to, while we're still here, flag that we're still from the TUC running our Leveraging Green program. So we've done 4 of these. These are green organising workshops for lay members, but also for the union staff. to talk about green issues and how they affect organising, or how they could affect organising, or vice versa. The next one of these is on agitating for climate action, and we're going to look at various different perspectives about the importance of political education, or just workplace education, or sort of intellectual education, as to inspire members or others to engage in climate action, be that kind of on the ecological side, or the kind of right up to kind of industrial action sort of end of things. It should be a really interesting discussion. That's next Tuesday. I will circulate links to that. We've already heard a few events that well, actually before we've started recording, so I'll circulate the details for those in the notes. Has anyone else got any final thoughts or events that they want to flag to everyone before we close? Ellen, is that a legacy hand or is that new?
It's legacy.
Okay. Debbie, then.
Just to say, I mean, not really trade union stuff, but locally we're trying to do a bit more in York about dracs and stop burning trees, and with Friends of the Earth, they've challenged the government twice now on climate plans that don't even meet the targets they set themselves. And I haven't yet read this fairness thing properly, but it might address some of what we were talking about earlier around polycrisis and, well, you know, fairness for people as well as planet.
Great, thanks, Debbie.
And thank you, Ian. I'll be in touch.
Yes, I've seen that exchange in the chat. That sounds fruitful. It sounds like a lot of what you're saying is what Debbie also says, and so it's yeah, that's a fruitful connection to make. Okay, well, of the links in the chat, I'll circulate those as well in the notes. But yeah, thanks for everyone for attending. I will catch up with a few of you afterwards, as discussed at the top. But thank you very much, and I'll see you all soon.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.